Welcome to Talk Purpose and Truth, shifting you into higher consciousness. A show that elevates, uplifts, and encourages listeners to grow, heal, awaken, and evolve. Eden and Kim include bold topics, interviews with inspiring guests, experts, and celebrities, intuitive readings, channeled messages, mental health awareness, and hot topics to expand your awareness. Tune in for unprecedented truth, authenticity, on-purpose discussions, and magic.
Could you tell us a little bit about your journey and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My whole background, I spent my 20s living in Israel, India, all throughout Asia and Europe. My background is in clinical psychology, and I love to merge Eastern ritual and Western psychology. I just finished my book. It's coming out March 2024. And essentially everything that I share with the world is helping you do the thing that you've always wanted to do, whether that means having a devoted meditation or manifestation practice, whether that means a grounded positive psychology or emotional intelligence framework. It's merging both the left and right brain to find the remedy that is going to help you heal, align, and grow and live on your highest possible timeline.
Oh, well, that's perfect.
Right.
Love that. Science of happiness frameworks. Can you tell us, how does that transform your relationship to yourself?
This is one of the this is the hottest conversation, especially with my corporate clients. So
Yeah.
positive psychology was brought to the world by Martin Seligman of University of Pennsylvania, and I studied with a lot of his colleagues at Columbia. So I went to Columbia in New York, and it was a very special program that I studied in. It's a master's in psychology in education and has this very wonderful spiritual focus. And one of the many incredible things, I took a positive psychology course, which literally translates into what makes life worth living. And there are so many specific frameworks where we are grounding, where Seligman grounds. If you follow this framework, you will be happier. And there's this incredible model. It's called the PERMA model, and it's PERMA. P is having positive emotions, positive experiences. E is engagement, which is living aligned to your strengths. R is relationships, connecting with people who allow you to speak unedited or where you really feel seen and heard. M is meaning, so having purpose in your life. And A is achievement, so your ability to work your way up in some trajectory in some way. So science of happiness is a huge conversation. It's typically the first thing I bring to a client who is moving through seasonal sadness or depression, a corporation. I like a lot of my Midwestern or East Coast clients in the winter time because seasonal depression and not getting sunlight is a real thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a really powerful framework and something I write about this in my book, and I talk about it regularly because it needs to be more widespread, knowing that you can tap into a happiness framework and feel better immediately.
Is that in your book that you are publishing?
Yeah. My book is, it's about 13 chapters, and I share a lot of very personal stories, and then a lot of research and a lot of spiritual or psychological practices. But I think sometimes you need the personal anecdote just to connect more deeply to the framework. So I always start with like maybe a funny, sad, scary, relatable story, and then go from there.
Nice. Yeah, I think it reminds me of Rob Mack. We had Rob Mack on a couple of times. He's a positive psychologist and studied really powerful. And the funny thing is, it's not really funny, but it's like interesting and intriguing is that that's really the cause of a lot of people feeling unhappy, is that they're not having a balance of those things. They're just like working 70 hours and then they have no time or balance to do anything else. And they're feeling stretched too thin, that's just one example, but a lot of the times that's what's going on. It's like, they're just all focused in one area and they're not taking the time to go, you know what, I'm going to just go do that project that I've always wanted to do my whole life, or I'm going to go travel. Even people that, a lot of people will say, well, I don't have money to travel, but I know people that are limited with their, with their funding or cash, and they go camping. Whatever you need to do to get out of your regular routine helps you embrace new things, and then it stretches your mind and helps everything.
Yeah, and it's also the conversation of making room for a miracle. In our day and age, you can find a flight. It might have a million stops, but it might be more cost effective and you could probably get to the place in the world that you want to go to. It's comes back into, what do you believe about the world to be true? And do you have the audacity to pursue your deepest desires and dreams? Because even more than a happiness framework, there's this conversation right now about spiritual starvation. It's, we think we know what's of highest good for
Recording in
us,
progress.
or we think we know what we want or need. And so often it does require a pause. It does require taking a step back, meeting your basic needs, which is the first chakra, which is a Sanskrit word for wheel, the Muladhara chakra, which sits at the base of the tailbone. Safety, security, comfort, food, shelter, your basic needs that must be met. And then working your way up from there.
And then what would that be?
It's a very important question to ask, because I'll have clients come to me all the time and they say, Erin, I'm so desperate to feel better. And I'll say, great, did you drink water today? Or, Erin, I'm so desperate to feel better. And I said, great, did you go for a walk and see the sun today? Even if you live in a place where there's not a sun, like a lot of sun, did you get outside? Did you connect to the most basic thing today? Did you stay inside on the couch or on the bed all day? Did you talk to somebody outside of yourself or me today? And basic needs have really shifted since Maslow brought the pyramid of needs into the world, which is literally saying, do you have a roof over your head? Do you have food? Do you have water? Wi-Fi has become a basic need. If you're going to carry out your work, if you're going to connect, if you're going to share your medicine in some way. Really profound relationships where you can live and speak unedited has become a basic need for so many of my clients. And if you desire to really tap into, sure, your highest potential, or just like your God-given right to go for it, whatever it is for you, and that's going to be different for every person. Not everybody is here to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody is here to be a homemaker mom. Not everybody is here to be a best-selling author. Like, feminism means that you get to choose whatever you desire. That's the freedom in it. And if you want to pursue your deepest desires and dreams, drink water, get sunlight. You have to eat well. You have to look at your diet. You want to connect to God, look at what you're putting in your mouth. So that's usually where I start.
It's so simple, the basics.
Yeah, very important though.
And people forget. Yeah, people forget.
Yeah.
All need each other.
It's about like being still. That's it. Or just being.
Yeah, I think for women especially, a lot of, and clients will come to me a lot. I think I talk a lot about, I spent a lot of time living in moderate silence when I was living in India, because I thought that's what I had to do, right? I was vegan. I was living in some like silence every now and then. This was like 8 years ago. And there's so many different pathways to connecting to divine, or God as you understand it, or a higher power as you understand it. And for women, we need to open up our hips, right? That's where we birth everything into the world, whether it's a book, an idea, a program, a child. So we need to sway, we need to move, we need to open up, we need to expand. So a silent seated practice might be, to some, much more masculine. That's why I typically teach an active meditation practice. That's what I've learned has worked best for thousands of my clients. So yes, the stillness is important. And so often, I just got off the phone with another client. We overcomplicate everything, but it really is the most basic things that help you feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's like the most simple things, like you're drinking water, or, like it's okay to take 10 minutes and do yoga and stretching. And, it's okay to meditate and just sitting there in silence, even if you're distracted, and I think that people try to make everything perfect. Like, well, I don't know how to do it and I'm not doing it perfect. And I used to be like that. Like, oh, I don't know how to dance, so I'm not going to dance, or I'm not going to do this because I'm not. And instead of just like, get to the place where you push past your comfort zone, and then you'll feel more free once you pass that uncomfortable feeling.
Absolutely. It does require, I talk about this very specific practice, and it's a Hebrew practice, and it's cheshbon hanefesh, which is just accounting of the soul, a deep inner check into self, a checking into your inner light. And to check into your inner light means that you know who you are, you know thyself, which is one of the greatest spiritual practices of all time, to truly know who you are, why you react the way you do, why you want what you think it's going to feel like once you have the thing. Because this intimacy with self, this connection to self, I mean, that's something that nobody could take away from you. And we call it self-love. We call it self-care, and we can bottle it up and market it on some like Instagram or TikTok ad. But it's much deeper than that. It's the clarity of knowing what it is to sit in the essence of your own light. And once you sit in the essence of your own light, there is an urgency, right? And we've all felt this, especially during and since the pandemic. There is urgency to show up. There is urgency to take up space. It's why I have this certification, the Align Coaching Certification, a year-long container where people become certified meditation teachers and spiritual psychology coaches. And it was birthed from a place of people wanting to know, how can they take up space in their life? How can they serve while also learning more about thyself and connecting with like-minded people, like-minded women? So it is a really powerful conversation. It's quite topical.
And so what would you suggest I get a lot of people that aren't even open to doing coaching or aren't even open to seeing someone, and they'll say, well, I'm just too uncomfortable to face myself. So I always find myself just distracting myself, or like, I don't want to be in a room alone, or, what's the best advice to give someone like that?
This is also, so Freudian psychology is the image of somebody laying on the couch and speaking word of conscious about everything that occurred in their week or everything that occurred in their life or all the traumas that they went through. There is one lineage of psychology where it's not always necessary to relive a trauma that occurred in the past, unless it is blocking the big thing. And this is something that I call the big belief, right? What is the big belief blocking you from getting to the next step? What I think is so interesting, Kim, and I know you have a life coaching practice. So in your practice, when somebody doesn't want to open up, it's because there's lacking that intimacy with self. And that's not a muscle that was ever strengthened for them.
Right. Right. And sometimes you just I find that you sometimes have to just do baby steps, like literally go stand outside and ground for 2 minutes by yourself and touch a tree, and like just something so simple. And that's so weird for them. And like, they'll be so proud when they come back, like, I did it. And then you can increase deeper and deeper. And then I find like a year later, they're like, oh, I did my, 30 minutes of meditation today. And I caught myself when I was, talking negatively about myself, so it can all be learned, which is such great news, because I think a lot of people will look at, somebody like you, Erin, and go, oh, she already knows it all. How would I ever become like her? And they compare, instead of like, hey, step by step, I can get to my own version of, feeling connected and spiritual.
That's a really big topic as well. I mean, in 2016, when I launched my business, I charged $1 a minute, right, to connect, to talk. And in the last long while of launching my business since then, which is 9 years, we're coming up on 9 years, you end up seeing themes. And I'm sure you see this in your practice as well. You see themes. So often my clients, perhaps similar to yours, we call it anxiety, we call it depression, we call it a breakup, we call it a divorce, we call it struggling with integration, ADD, ADHD, and we have these very clinical terms for what we are experiencing. And also, it is never a one-size-fits-all remedy, solution, conversation. So it's finding out, what does somebody really need to reconnect to themselves? And that is why so often, my specific program, it was more of a PhD track. And I ended up not pursuing that route, because when it comes to healing, I do think there's elements where, of course, use the clinical psychology frameworks. And sometimes you need a higher power as you understand it. You need to learn how to relax your nervous system. You need to get out of flight, fright, or freeze. You need to connect with other like-minded people. You need to eat well. You need to feed yourself good food. So it's the mixture of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
It's a lot. Yeah. And how do you heal trauma, anxiety, and seasonal sadness if this person, well, anything, how do you heal anything when somebody is fighting you, or they are repeating what they knew, what all they learned from their parents? How do they get back to being on track, being in the place where they are really wanting to know who they are? Because some people are just like, I'm fine. I live my life and I do fine. Nothing's wrong with me.
Yeah, you don't. You don't heal. That person doesn't heal.
Because they're not wanting to already,
And you
right?
can't force somebody to go on the journey because healing takes gusto, right? It means that you want to take up space in your life. It means that you want to heal your lineage. It means that it ends with you. There's a really incredible book about intergenerational trauma called It Didn't Start With Us. It Didn't Start With You. And yeah, you can't force somebody to heal. They have to want to do it for themselves. And if they don't learn it in this lifetime, they'll get it again in the next.
Yeah, it's just simple as that.
It is.
Okay. And you lived in mostly a silent ashram in India, right?
Yeah, so I was living in Mumbai for a long time. So I had a corporate job after undergrad in Chicago, and then I was leading trips to Europe and the Middle East to Israel. And on one trip to Israel in January 2015, I stayed for 6 months and I lived off the land and I spent time with all these different mystics, healers, nutritionists, like really wellness people and entrepreneurs, and spent a significant amount of time alone with myself. And I know that that is kind of the greatest privilege of all. I was 23. I had my own apartment right outside of Tel Aviv, and I was just alone. And that is so sacred. And that ultimately led me to India. And I was living in Baikala, which is a predominantly Muslim community in Mumbai. And then I was working in the Kalwa slums, about an hour train ride away from there, teaching hygiene essentially and basic English and Hindi in the slums. And I don't know Hindi. I learned a bit at the time. And during this time, my fellowship was just 2 months long in Mumbai. I ended up dating this lovely guy in Mumbai, and I would live in many different ashrams and spiritual centers and come back to like Bollywood area as my home base. And I did a 200-hour yoga teacher training in a mostly silent ashram in South India, which like in a yoga teacher training, you need to speak a little bit, right? To like learn about alignment or the asana or the benefits of a specific pose. So it was definitely a unique experience. And I think it's so important for people who feel pressure to live in like a specific spiritual box. I find God in connecting to others and talking and communication. So silence was never going to be like the highest pathway for me, but I had to kind of learn that on my own.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, with Israel, we read that you are a spiritual Jew, like Eden, and have many trips to Israel. And you also talked about during that time you learned about intuitive eating. So kind of a double question.
Oh, yeah. How you feed your body is a form of self-love. So living in Israel my husband and I are deeply connected. We're going there in a couple of weeks. We love the land. As our life exists in Chicago, Austin, it exists in Tel Aviv. Like we love it there. We're very connected. And I lead a million trips there also all the time. And there's a potency there. And maybe Eden, I'm guessing you've also been to Israel. No, you gotta go. Yeah.
I know. I don't know if it's too late to do my free birthright trip, but I could do that if it's not too late.
Yeah, it ends at 26. So
oh, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about some alternative routes. Eden is referencing this one organization. It's called Birthright, or in Hebrew, it's Taglit. And if you are Jewish enough to die in the Holocaust, you're Jewish enough to get a free trip to Israel. So this means one Jewish grandparent, and it is funded. It's funded by all these different organizations. I used to lead all the spiritual niche Birthright trips, which was like one of the greatest privileges of my life, and it was a really incredible. It's a really incredible trip connecting to the land. So even before my husband and I were together, he lived in Jerusalem. Even before I knew my husband, I was living all over the country. And this was also the time I was living in Chicago right before Israel, and I was studying functional medicine nutrition. And I have a background in functional medicine nutrition. And the most sacred thing of all, and this is the reason why I went back to school for clinical psychology and not dietetics, is because how you feed your body is a form of self-love. So it doesn't matter if I tell you to eat real food, right? Like eat grass-fed meat, eat fruits and vegetables from the local farmer's market if that's accessible to you, or order it online. Try not to eat too many foods with words you don't understand in the ingredients, right? Stay away from seed oils and GMOs. It doesn't matter if I say that to you if you have an emotional connection to a specific food and we're not talking about that emotional connection, if that's what comforts you, if that's what feels safe. So intuitive eating is knowing, why am I eating this thing? Why am I putting this thing in my mouth? Am I seeking comfort? Am I so exhausted? I'm just like moving, which is so many of us, moving throughout the day, trying to get shit done. Like the dishwasher is full. I'd never made the bed. I have a Zoom meeting that I have to hop on in 2 minutes. I have toothpaste in the corner of my mouth, and you're just like shoving food in your mouth. Why am I doing this? Right? Or even the times of the day that you're eating. So many of my clients will eat at the same time as their kids when they're not even hungry during that time. And so intuitive eating is, again, it comes back into deeply knowing thyself, trusting your own innate wisdom, and your body is going to tell you what it deeply desires and what it needs. And you have to trust that. So again, it comes back to intimacy with self.
Once again, it always does.
Yeah. I'm getting a lot better with doing that. Like, it's almost like it's just like regular intuition, but maybe before never thinking like, oh yeah, you could do this with eating as well. And so I've been practicing that for the last couple of years, getting better to where I'm like, it's the same feeling as when intuitive messages come in a lot of the time, like you're supposed to be having this, go buy this right now, whatever.
Yeah, but here's a good question. I think it's hard to decipher what is a craving and then what is your intuition. What does your body intuitively want?
So here's the thing, and this might be like, it does require a healthy palate. And that might mean giving up sugar or gluten or dairy or corn, soy, alcohol, caffeine for a specific amount of time. Dairy is like 10 days. It's not a big deal. Gluten is 90, especially in America. This will not be true. So anyone listening in Europe, anywhere outside of America, this is not true. In America, our food is totally bastardized. We are quite addicted to our food. We have glyphosate in our gluten. So it's not even us reacting to gluten. It's the other chemicals in there as well. So it does require having a refined palate, which might mean going through a period where you're editing the food that you're eating. And not all, and I've learned this recently, like I'm 18 weeks pregnant, Baruch Hashem, and I'm eating foods that I haven't consistently eaten gluten and dairy in a decade. Now I'm eating a ton of gluten and dairy because I'm still averse to a lot of different foods, and this is something that I can get in my body. But a grass-fed dairy from a local cow, I'm in Austin right now, a cow that's 100 miles away, is a real food compared to, Kraft singles, which isn't real at all.
Yeah.
And not all meat is created equal, right? Regenerative farm, grass-fed meat, and we eat a lot of ancestorial blends. So the liver is in there, the heart is in there. Like you're eating these things that your ancestors ate. So not all food is created equal. And everything that I'm saying, it might sound expensive. It's not. It's building a strong relationship with the farmers nearby. And you can do this virtually as well. So you are right. A craving could be an addiction. So if you are craving sugar like all the time, which is so common, it might be candida, which is like a yeast overgrowth. You know, this is you if you have commonly get yeast infections, if you have a lot of dandruff, like dry, flaky skin, if you stick out your tongue in the morning and there's a lot of white coating, that could be a lot of different things though too. That does require a little bit of time away from some of these foods, and you have to love yourself enough to do that. You have to want it.
Yeah.
And then once you're free of that addiction, like you really only need to go through, I don't even want to call it a cleanse. I don't even want to call it a detox. It's just, you have to care so much about yourself that you're willing to let go of something that you're partially addicted to find out what a refined palate is so that you can become a more clear, intuitive eater.
Okay. That actually feels more possible when you do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed too, like, let's say I go to Italy, I will eat like a ton of pasta and bread and walk, but not other exercise, and eat as much as I want. And I come back and have lost like 8 pounds. Whereas here, if I ate a lot of pasta and bread, I would probably gain 8 pounds.
Yeah, it's different food. They won't trade with us for a reason. I have a client in Rome, living in Rome, and I was talking to her this morning, and it's just not equal. And I think this becomes a bigger conversation. Even like Kim, the way that you started, the question that you asked me in the beginning, we live in America, and I'm guessing maybe a lot of your listeners are American listeners.
We have all over the place. Yeah.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Divine. Yeah. Okay. So this might just be relevant to Americans, but to pause and ask yourself, what do I want? We're programmed to want the American dream. And to want the American dream is to work 40 hours a week, maybe get a car and a mortgage, maybe have some kids. And like, that's the American dream. That's not true for so many people I work with. Majority of my clients live all around the world nomadically, or spend 6 months here and 6 months somewhere else, or they desire that. So they try to create a remote or digital business. But it also comes back into the food sources. So if you're in this cycle of the American dream and you're in the cycle of eating American food, you're not going to take that pause and ask yourself, what do I want?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Food for thought.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears, you were talking about how you have a spiritual life coach certification, and I was looking, and you have a mastermind stuff I love to do too. You have your book, but with today's attention span, like for example, a lot of videos, no matter how great they are, get 15 seconds viewed, and that's it. The attention span is shorter. What is your ideal way that you market? Because I get that question a lot from people, like, what do I do now? Times have changed and shifted so much.
Our job as truth seekers is to not dumb down what we know to be sacred. So that may mean it's a 60-second video instead of a 15-second video. Or that may mean instead of trademarking a spiritual practice, you don't bother with trademarking it, because a spiritual practice is God-given, is spirit-given, and everybody gets access to it. But this is a very important conversation, because when you are choosing to help people in the self-development world, in the spiritual world, you have to keep what we know to be holy. And you can't edit so much in the name of marketing. So yeah, it always comes back to source. Always come first to the integrity. And if you are living in integrity, it doesn't matter how long the video is.
Yeah. But it also doesn't matter how many people are watching if you're in integrity, because you're just, that you're connecting with the people who are meant to see your video. And that's enough.
Yeah.
And this is soulmate clients. I tell all of my clients. So I have a business coaching mastermind that's enrolling right now for entrepreneurs who want to scale to 6 figures and multiple 6 figures. We're ready by the time this episode comes out. I just have a ton of applications for that. I have the certification, a year-long container where people become a certified meditation teacher and spiritual psychology coach. And my job isn't to entertain the attention span of the modern day being. My job is to educate in a way that will give people the transformation that they need more than anything, so that they can also be the guides, the teachers, the coaches, the midwives of the soul. So I think it comes back into it comes back to, you know, the integrity of it all.
Yeah. And
Right.
being aligned with your highest path.
Yeah, and alignment is big because people don't know thyself. So,
Yeah.
like some people have never felt the. And for anyone who's listening, I like to explain alignment as the feeling you get when you're getting ready to go to like a dinner party and you're about to go meet your soul friends, where like you could wear anything, you could bring any food, you could wear like your biggest bold dress, or you could come in your PJs and they love you, versus how you feel when you're going to a dinner party of like people who just like, like you're going because it's like your husband's coworkers, friends event, like you kind of have to go. And then you're overthinking everything. What should I wear? What should I bring? So that's how I like to explain alignment, because we've all been in that situation where we've forced ourselves to go to an event that we don't want to go to. The feeling state of alignment allows the world to conspire in your favor. And we haven't even talked about like law of attraction or manifestation, and really meditation, because maybe you talk about meditation a lot. But alignment is the thing that just, again, it's intimacy with self. When you know who you are and what feels good with you, you do become dangerous. You're not easily manipulated. You know what you want. You flow in a state of, and it doesn't need to be highest vibration. It's truth. And that's all there really needs to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, get aligned for anyone listening. That's where the deep work is.
Yep.
We always say, does this, with everything, we always say, does this feel forced or flowing? And when it feels forced, you want to stop and question yourself, like, is it something I just need to like alter a bit, or do I need to not go there and not do it, you know? So I love that. And then how do you balance being wealthy and bringing in wealth? You know, I like to say money is the root of all miracles. How do you bring in wealth but also stay balanced with everything else?
So what is money? Money is, a lot of people will say money is energy, but it's another vehicle to help you connect to, you know, God as you understand it, right? So how are you going to use it? For example, I know that John and I, my husband John, we could move to Bali right now, we could move to Bali, Indonesia, and live comfortably for the rest of our lives, you know, spending $60 a day in a nice villa, eating the best food ever. If anybody's listening and you're called to Bali, this is your sign to go to Bali, or join me on retreat, because I think I'm going to start planning one there soon. It's another avenue to share the medicine. So I know that with every client that chooses to work with me, they're investing in also kind of who I am and what I believe in, which is supporting female entrepreneurs in launching and scaling a business, to share the medicine on their heart, because those are the voices that need to be amplified. So money is another vehicle to share the medicine. And I think this is so important, because all of clients come to me and they'll say, selling is so toxic. Selling doesn't feel good to me. Selling feels so markety. But how is somebody going to experience the transformation otherwise? You share from a place of alignment. Listen, I was once here and now I'm there. And this is the framework I followed. If it aligns, DM me. If it doesn't, you know, peace to you. Live your life.
I love
no attachment then.
Yes.
Yeah.
You also spoke on one of your videos about you called your husband in. Share with us how you did that.
I have this whole manifestation masterclass. It's completely free, so I'll share it with you guys to put in your show notes. Yeah, I manifested my husband, and I really believe it. I believe in the practice of like truly acting it, and then you're attracting it. I work with a lot of manifestation mantras. I believe in powerful ceremony. I know that a lot of us we are like quite mystical beings, and you can tap into that. So manifestation is embodying what you deeply desire in the present moment in time. Manifestation is making yourself equal to that energy so that when it is visible in your line of sight, it knows that it's coming for you. So I love working. So I did a very specific ceremony to manifest my husband. I teach a very specific practice called snapshot manifestation. It is a life-altering practice. It's when everything you desire is existing in one moment in time. I'll share this with all of you. And I also work with a lot of very specific manifestation mantras. So one of my most favorite ones is I'll have some of that. I'll have some of that is so profound. It's also a wonderful clarity tool. So if anything I'm saying on this episode resonates and you desire that for yourself, just say, I'll have some of that. If you are walking down the street and you see a couple holding hands and they're like looking at each other so lovingly and you desire that for self, say, I'll have some of that. If you see somebody on social media eating a burger and it looks amazing, or they're walking throughout Italy on this incredible trip, or they're celebrating a book launch or a 100K launch, and you desire that for self, just say, I'll have some of that, because then you are telling the energy around you, this is the feeling state I desire. This is the thing. And then it increases your clarity as well.
So you don't have to be specific, because I know sometimes people tell you in manifestation, you have to give every detail about every feeling and the specific visual that you have. But that is just like pointing it out, and it's simple.
It is specific though. I mean, you're saying this is it. This is the thing that I want. Yeah.
Easier to me than
so
alternative.
It's specific.
Yeah.
And you said in another video, you said, I'll have some of that. And then I think it was another one you said, why not me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, why not me is another one that I love, right? If you are seeing it out in the world and it exists, why can't it be you?
Right. I think what's great about that is I recently, and you helped, Erin, because I had just seen your video, and this was like a couple weeks ago, and I had someone really troubled because they said, I'm terrible. I was feeling jealous about a friend who had achieved this certain thing. And I'm like, you know what? That's just your label. You're deciding you were jealous, but you really just looked at it like, okay, I can see my life going that way, and I'll have some of that. I want that too. And so she was able to shift it and not feel so bad, like, oh, okay, I was just seeing the possibilities and I wasn't feeling these evil intentions towards her. Yeah.
And it's also noticing, is it jealousy or is it envy? And this is the other thing about like our American language is, we don't have we think we have so many words to describe feeling states. And when you expand your vocabulary, you speak multiple languages, you end up having more verbs, nouns, adjectives that you can use to describe what you desire or to describe your feeling state as well. Yeah. And whenever you feel these feeling states of somebody having something that you want and you want it as well, you have to celebrate them on some level. I know it's a hard one, because when you judge them or hate on them or like kind of give them the hard time, it's kind of blocking that energy from it accessing you.
Thank you for listening to Talk Purpose and Truth podcast. Find out more at talkpurposeandtruth.com. And follow us at Talk Purpose Truth on Instagram and Facebook.